Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. If you're a chief executive or if you think like one and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of Xquadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve even more extraordinary results. Because no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO. How do you create a no glass ceiling culture where everyone can thrive? How do you make the subject of regulatory compliance inspiring and motivating to tech talent when it's not normally a subject that perhaps at first glance is going to get people pumped up? And how do you make a genuine difference in the lives and in the localities where you're based, in the local communities where your global company is actually situated? These are the questions that I talk about today with Ben Dorks, who is the Chief Executive of Ideagen. Ideagen is an AIM-listed leader in the regulatory and compliance and risk software space. He was appointed to the role in 2018. He'd previously been Chief Customer Officer. And we dive in to Ben's passion, his inspiration, how he motivates people, how he serves the local community, and how he's created mentoring programs that are really, really impactful in his local areas. It's really what gets him out of bed in the morning. And I think this comes through in this fascinating episode, which I'm sure you'll enjoy, with Ben Dorks, CEO of Ideagen. Hi, Ben, and welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to meet you, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Hey, I'm looking forward to this conversation. You're the Chief Executive of Ideagen, which is a really fast-growing company, and I think you've got a really interesting story to tell us about, what drives you as a leader of that business, and kind of what gets you out of bed in the morning every day to build this business. I think you said that it was you're hoping to double the business, right, over the next couple of years. So, for business that's already a reasonable sized business, that's no mean feat in what's a very uncertain world. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Before we jump in, why don't you perhaps just explain a little bit about what is Ideagen? And how did you get involved in the first place? What attracted you into this business?
Thank you for that. So Ideagen is a regulatory and compliance software tool used by over 8,000 organizations globally to manage everything from their quality, health, safety, audits through to regulated collaboration in organizations such as KPMG through to the Federal Aviation Authority. The company was originally admitted onto the London AIM market, so we're a listed business all the way back in 2012 as a buy and build vehicle. And I came with the first acquisition, so I'd started my own business all the way back in 2004, bootstrapped it, paid the salaries on the credit card in 2009, which I remember very vividly. And felt really lucky, if I'm honest, to have made the sort of exit, and then really grew in Ideagen. I started off as a sales and marketing director, and moved through to the board and became chief executive in 2018.
Fantastic. So you came in as sales and marketing director, and then you became chief executive. It's interesting, right? You've had an interesting journey then, founder into a more corporate structure, and then promoted. So first of all, what got you into this space? Obviously, you were already in the regulatory space, presumably before, with your first business, which was then acquired. What kind of motivated you to get into that in the first place? Why was that important to you?
So absolutely. I started off selling and developing regulatory document management for healthcare, and that really came about from working in the healthcare market in selling other software for a period of time and understanding the risks associated with incorrect documentation being presented to clinicians, the way that particularly around pathology, which was an area that we invested heavily in, about getting timely reports to the right individuals, including your local primary care GP practice, as well as understanding, if you like, the trends. So one of the issues of the historical systems was that you were taking something very much in isolation rather than see it in the context of maybe what had been happening over a period of time. So for me, I took a great pride in trying to present information that enabled them to comply with the regulatory oversight they had in the UK, the MHRA, as well as being able to really improve the productivity and the diligence of the clinicians that are actually making that decision. And then that's really evolved to where we are today, as I said, with over 8,000 customers across all types of markets.
It's interesting you use the word pride, because I was going to interrupt at some point and then you went there, and I was going to say, like, does anybody really get excited and passionate about regulatory compliance, right? Like, is that something you can really put your heart and soul behind? Or, for me, it sounds a little bit like it's this tedious admin, but it sounds like there is some, it sounds like actually you saw beyond that.
I would argue it's those quiet voices, those safe hands that really protect our world. They are very diligent. They're very much focused on doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But let's be honest, nobody invites into a board, the head of health and safety, and it's often only often when something goes wrong that they realise they've not been investing. So we feel that our business is really to support those quiet voices and safe hands that are protecting the world, and be a voice for that community, because I think that really for us is how we're going to make a difference and make an impact, and people realise that it's not just about box ticking, which is often what people think about when we talk about regulatory and compliance, but that it actually has a benefit. And there's lots of examples, that, if you take the food industry, the regulations in the food industry to make sure the food that appears on your table is safe and edible, and not going to give you salmonella, is one example of where, regulation has a very positive effect.
Yeah, at this point, about it's not just about box ticking, I think is a great one, because it means you're having to explain the bigger meaning behind it all. So how do you do that, right? I know you're in the tech-driven business, ambitious goals, very tight talent market, right? So you have to sell this vision a bit, right, to people, internally and externally, I guess. So how do you kind of help them understand that bigger picture, right? That it's not just about, as you said, box ticking.
I think you've got to look at the outcomes that can be achieved by delivering, a really honest and effective regulatory and compliance system. If we're looking in our aviation customers that include British Airways and Emirates Airlines and Ryanair, they will all focus on safety, and the more information that they have and the more open the policy is and the environment around safety, the less likely planes are to crash. And that for us is what we're trying to achieve across all of our markets. And we include aviation, we include transport in that, but we also include life sciences, food and drink, and healthcare. And so for us, the similarities between each of those markets, they may be at different stage in their genesis, but the similarities between those markets are very obvious. We just have to make sure that we're talking to the story about the outcomes of what you're going to achieve, not the fact there's an extra 2 boxes to tick on a form, which is how often chief executives feel about it, let's be honest.
Yeah. Exactly. But as you said, it's so fundamental, and actually it is a massive risk factor for any company. I was one of my clients. They're in, actually not a tech client, this one, but they're more an industrial global player, and for them it's like health is number one, and then profit is number two, because it has such a massive, any accidents just destroy everything, their brand, their reputation, their, everything, right? It's just
Yeah, absolutely.
terrible. So
I mean,
high stakes.
reputational impact is huge. I mean, the personal cost is huge and significant, and the financial impact. And so, we talk about the outcomes of all of those. If you've got a robust system in place, then that makes a huge difference and can have a huge impact on lives, on the business, and on your customers. And that's what we really focus on.
Yeah. So let's talk about your personal mission as a leader. You said, you're set up your own business. You have that entrepreneurial spirit. You've obviously stayed in this business now for many years. What's the personal mission that you're on, right? What drives you as a leader? What's the legacy that you look to create? If you at some point when you leave this role or when you retire or whatever it is, what are you going to look back on and be really proud about? What's that legacy going to be?
I think in terms of legacy, I was actually born 3 miles away from where this office is. My family still live here. My father's in the nursing home down the road. My mother lives literally in the next village. My 3 brothers all live within 2 or 3 miles of where we are. My father started the homeless charity around here. So, building a business in your own backyard means a huge amount, and it's really significant when you can actually start to have a significant impact on the communities, the local communities around us, and create significant employment opportunities. So for me, the personal legacy is about creating that sustainable organization that creates lots of growth opportunities for the local region, and supports our communities. And we have a big community program, Think Big, that's offering apprenticeships to 16-year-olds, level 2 apprenticeships to 16-year-olds that traditionally are not in employment, education, or training. And it's a very, very visible impact to dozens of people each and every year. And that means a huge amount. So creating that sort of sustainable business that supports that when I'm not here. Although I probably feel like I'll be going out in a coffin if I'm honest, because I love it that much. But I think that for me is the personal legacy. And if we can do that on a global basis, not just in Nottingham but also in our offices in Kuala Lumpur and in Sydney, in Blacksburg in the US, and replicate that on a global basis and have impact on hundreds of lives, then I shall certainly retire happy.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's a global dimension to it, but then it's local within that, right? It's that instead in your own backyard, but then also there's other backyards, right, that you can also be working on. I think it's nice to look at it in that way because it gets very specific, right? You're not trying to, you're not able to probably impact every community in the world, but you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yesterday, I mean, we sponsor Nottingham Forest, the football club, through our Think Big community program. They're super supportive of that. And yesterday, we went through to the next round of the FA Cup, and there were 10 kids there that we've taken out of school that have gone through the Think Big masterclass. And as part of their reward is that they get tickets, and that's great. Seeing them sat there and being enthused, that they understand that great performance can give great rewards even at that young age, and they start to see opportunity. And that's what the Think Big program is that people to see opportunity in tech and in themselves. The business may have more than trebled since I became CEO, but I still take far greater pride in seeing that last night than I necessarily do about just the growth of the business.
Yeah, well, I always say, finance is the fuel. It fuels the business, but you have to know what where the business is going, what's the impact it's trying to make. Actually, not everyone agrees with that, right? Some people just believe it's the finances all that matters, but I think actually when you have a purpose which the finance can fuel, then actually you create more of a virtuous circle and everything improves.
I agree. Yeah, it's great. It's great to see, and I think as beyond that, it gets lots of other people engaged into what we're trying to achieve. And when we did this initially, we said how many people want to mentor a sort of child through their, within our organization, and 45 people put their hand up straight away and said, yeah, put us through the program so we can support and help somebody in that last year of school when they're likely to fall off a cliff because they come from socially disadvantaged backgrounds and everything else. And as I said, you take great pride in things like that. I think that makes a real difference to the business as well as the community.
Yeah, I think that's a great it's a great story. I have a client of mine who works in telecoms, and one of his founding visions was really this idea of, for example, installing fiber networks in disadvantaged areas and seeing, he said, I just want to see like one underprivileged kid, create a new career, in gaming or something like this, right? Because he had the access to the infrastructure and be able to kind of lift himself up and, and create a new future for himself. And, that has now happened. But, it's very many years ago, he had this thing, and now there's great gaming hubs and all these things that have been created, which is not normally in the remit of the telecoms company. But because he had that larger vision and people rise up to it around the ecosystem, employees and partners and customers and other things. And I think what you talked there about the mentors, and actually giving them something to be proud in, I think is super differentiating. So
we're really pleased about the impact it's having, as I said, not just in the communities, but wider than that within the business. And I think as a business, we're very much a business that believes in doing the right thing as it's the right thing to do. I think we were one of the first corporates, certainly in the UK, to announce that we were cutting ties with Russia. We did that within 2 hours of being invaded, and we felt it's the right thing to do. We have a number of countries that we refuse to deal with because they don't underpin the values that we hold very dear to us as an organization. And that's the way that we've always just tried to run the business, very much our personal belief system.
It's Richard here with just a quick interlude. If you're serious about multiplying your impact, I have a free resource that you won't want to miss. I've put together a short email course called Exponential Leadership Principles. In it, I set out how you can use the same strategies as some of the world's top leaders to get out of incremental progress and achieve breakthrough results. Be prepared to have your current thinking challenged and to learn some very new ways of leading. If you're interested in following along, simply sign up at xquadrant.com/go/exponential. And now back to the conversation.
So Ben, tell me about, how do you mobilize people around your vision? Clearly this is an organization, I think, with several hundred people in it. You're going places, you want to double the business. You cross multiple geographies. How do you mobilize people? How do you get them to bring their best to the game?
I think that's a great question, Richard, and it's one I think about actually quite a lot, because in 2004, when there was 5 of us locked in a single room when we were starting our own business, mobilizing those people is very different to where we are today with over 1,050 people.
Okay.
And I think that's something that I've really had to change in the way I manage that communication. I think that for me, it's a lot about honesty and transparency and humility. And I've learned along the way, some hard lessons along the way, that you've got to make sure that you are listening to people. And I think listening is at the heart of of a CEO. So I've always, after those times of thinking that I was the brightest and best in the room, and I think every CEO has probably gone through that stage. And I've focused very hard on active listening and not talking over people, speaking last. I've always found it challenging when we repeat the same subject. I'm not somebody that needs to talk around things in circles for very long. Please ask my wife that one. But I've sort of recognised that listening for the quiet voices is really important, as the sort of loudest is rarely the most insightful. So, for me, that honesty and transparency and listening, I think, has been really important. I think that the second part of that is that one of our core behaviours is drive. So I set very challenging goals. I very much believe in that culture of excellence and high standards. And when we sort of look at our values, our values are ambition, their adventure, and their community. And that ambition very much reflects the way that we view the world. That we want to be the trusted name in regulatory and compliance solutions globally. We want a global community of customers and colleagues and a real family. We want to have fun along the way. We want to create an environment that is constantly disrupting ourselves, and we need to do that in a safe environment. So if you're going to constantly disrupt yourselves, and I talk about being relentlessly dissatisfied, then we need to do it safely. And therefore we talk about, there's no such thing as failure and only feedback. And so for me, it's mobilizing people is about creating a purpose and a vision that people feel that they can stand behind. And then encouraging people to be curious, to develop, to explore. And we talk about IQ, EQ, and CQ, and the CQ is the commercial acumen of having a learning-based culture that people feel safe in.
Got it. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, because I hear that you've got this, you obviously optimistic and you bring a lot of that to it, but also you've got this relentless dissatisfaction you talked about, and very high standards and drive and challenge and so forth. So I'm just kind of wondering, how does all that play out in the organization? If I was going to talk to, somebody in the organization, what would you think? How would they experience it? I'm just, curious as to, what would you say? What do you think they would say inspires them, and what do you think might say frustrates them?
I think frustrates them is sometimes change. We like people that like adventure, and part of adventure is challenging yourself and liking change, but not everybody likes change all of the time, and we need to recognize that different people are at different stages in their sort of change cycle. So that's something that we become very, very aware of. I think sometimes change creates uncertainty, and through that you then get fear and doubts, and so for us, if the negative side of all of that is that we have to make sure that we get our we get our communication really well, that we're presenting with clarity, because if you've got a growth vision that sort of looks a bit like that, then I think clarity becomes really, really important. And there's almost a pact of trust between us as leaders and the rest of our colleagues to ensure that they feel safe in that. For those on the flip side of that who are feeling very adventurous at that particular point in time, then we create great opportunities. We're an organization with no glass ceilings. If you're good enough, you'll be given the opportunity, and that very much comes from myself. I mean, people often say, how did you end up as a CEO? I certainly, when I left school at 16, with not even a handful of GCSEs, and my first job was door knocking, selling pens and paper. I'm not sure that anybody believed I'd become CEO of an AIM30 company, employing over 1,000 people. So, for us, it's all about being able to create an environment where people can grow and develop, and people who are very much in that change cycle can really explore how far they want to go and how quickly they want to go, because in an organization that is as fast as ours, there's always opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ben, because I think that story, your story is bound to come out in that leadership ethos, as you said, right? You are the example of no glass ceilings, and therefore that's the organization that you're creating. I always believe that there's the story, the personal stories of the leaders come out in the culture, right? Because it's who they are. It's what they're passionate about, and it's what they deeply stand for. And so I guess I see that in you, right? You've mentioned that several times. I can see that already, that you do stand for, growth, right? Giving people opportunities.
Absolutely. There's people, certainly in my background, that gave me opportunities at different stages. The first time I jumped from the tech, the sort of paper industry into the tech industry, and then finally being given the chance when the CEO left Ideagen to become the chairman, and he straight away said, we're not having a search, Ben's going to get the job, and that's very humbling, that people are prepared to back you to the extent that they have along the way, especially with when your CV's not got a lot on it.
Well, let's move on. Just I see time ticking away. I want to ask you a few quick-fire questions. I always find these interesting to get the responses to these from different executives around the world. So, what's a favourite quote, right, that might guide you as a leadership principle that you stand with? It's Maya Angelou, which is, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, people will never forget how you made them feel. And I stick true to that principle all of the time. Yeah, I love it. How about a famous app, a favorite app, something on your phone, that might not everybody be using, but you find it's really helpful for your own?
McKinsey Insights. Yeah, I read it, and Outlook, obviously, that I'm completely addicted to. But I do normally wake up and read the McKinsey Insights of the day. Always useful.
Yeah,
different way of thinking.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, a book that's influenced you.
So I've gone for an old school book from a long time ago. So the book that probably had the biggest impact on my life was a book called Power-Based Selling, which came out in the very early 90s. And I think I read it first in about 95, 96. And I realized at that point that sales had the potential to be a profession and a career, and that it was something that, if I worked hard at and trained on, then it could have a really significant impact on my ability to grow and develop. And that was my first business book, and I still have a copy of it, and every now and again I periodically pick it up.
Fantastic. Yeah, some of those early books have an impact. I remember when I was literally a kid, I picked up my dad's book on negotiation. I don't know, it's called Everything is Negotiable. Yeah. And I remember reading it on holiday, and then I was going and negotiating my souvenirs from the market stands and stuff, and it really stuck with me, that book. It's amazing how those early ones sometimes change your trajectory in some ways.
They most definitely do.
So what advice would you give your 20-year self?
Very simply, leaders read. And I still follow the principle of I read for 5 hours a week. Lots of different books, lots of different articles. And I've been committed to that for probably nearly 20 years now. But I probably got into it 6 or 7 years too late. I might have got here a little bit earlier if I'd done it a little bit earlier, but I'd definitely tell myself leaders read.
Yeah, that's a fantastic one. Yeah, I learned that very similar quote. I think it was readers are leaders and leaders are readers. It makes a massive difference. I think when I started reading seriously, things changed dramatically.
Absolutely.
Last quick question is, many of our guests on the show come from referrals, so I'm always interested in who inspires CEOs. So, is there an impactful CEO that you know who's inspired you? Somebody who might be a great guest for a future episode.
I'm very privileged. I know quite a number of CEOs now. Jonathan Satchell, actually from Learning Technology Group.
He's been on. He's
has he?
Been there. There you go. Yeah, he's very interesting. Yeah, he's on our sequence of scaling. Yeah, he's really
that's exactly what I was going to say. So for me, it's that Jonathan's one of the very few people that have done that sort of soup to nuts journey of creating from a small business to a unicorn. And for me, his the secret sauce is that ability for long-term vision and execution. And he's in the times I've spoken to him, he's sort of thinking of D, E, F while everybody else in the room still on A, B, and C. And that's a real quality to be able to see that while also having the diligence to go back in and make sure that A, B, C have been completed. To the right standard. So Jonathan Satchell is probably the first one. I have many more, but he's always mine.
Yeah, no, I get it. Jonathan's very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. So it's we had a really good conversation about how he'd been building this business so fast with acquiring and growing as well. And very interesting. Finally, let's talk about your next level, because I always believe that no matter how much we've achieved, there's always a next level to go to. So where does Ideagen go from here? What's its next level going to look like?
So we want to continue to grow, through a mixture of acquisitions and organically. We expect to sort of double over the next 2 to 3 years, and we have aims and aspirations way beyond just doubling over the next 2 to 3 years. So we have a 7-year plan internally that we're looking to achieve, and that's everything from a financial and the golden KPIs to really focusing on creating a performance-led culture that is enabling forging that global customer community and creating a real family of colleagues. And I think we're certainly on track, but there's always a heck of a lot more that we can do and will do to ensure that we maintain our trajectory and deliver on the sort of aspiration.
And finally, what will you need to do differently to multiply your own impact? What's going to be different for you as a leader?
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges, having come from a small company background into a corporate background and back into a small company, and then here where we are today. I love that mix of small business and corporate. I think that creates a great blend. But as we continue to grow, then I need to sort of maintain my elevation. It's very easy to get dragged into the detail. And if you're really going to execute on that vision, I need to maintain my elevation. I need to sort and certainly lead with clarity and energy. A lot of that stems, a lot of how the business feels, especially in these very uncertain times, stems from how relentlessly optimistic the leader is, but the energy that they talk about and the clarity in which they're able to articulate the vision. And on a personal note, I always have to work on being a commentator versus an improver. Which is something that sits on my whiteboard just there in the top left-hand corner. And, it actually really helped drive improvements within the business, not just commentate from afar, which is a very, very easy trait to fall into as a chief exec. And, something that I personally work very hard on to make sure that I'm able to support the succession of the business in the long term as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great distinction. Finally, if anyone wants to get in touch with you or with Ideagen, what's the best way for them to do that?
Always available on LinkedIn, Ben Dorks, and then the website is ideagen.com.
Perfect. Well, hey, Ben, it's been great to speak. So I love your vision, your energy, the sense of ambition that the business has got, and for sharing some of these. Showing some of who you are, right, and the kind of business that you've been building. And I just love the things that you're up to as well on the social side, right? It's not purely about the numbers. There's a mission behind it. There's creating an employee culture, which is really healthy and which is raising people up. And so I want to honor you for doing that and for being that kind of leader, and also for taking the time to share some of that with us and with the audience. So thank you.
No, thank you very much, Richard, for the invite. Truly honoured. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye now.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? If you're ready to learn more about our content, our coaching and our community, then visit us at xquadrant.com.